Welcome to my poster presentation on meditating with light. Some biographical facts about me. I have both a technical and a psychology background, and I've been a meditation teacher and psychotherapist for about 30 years now. My approach integrates Eastern and Western knowledge and wisdom, body and mind, technical and non-technical methods of intervention, and I've been a neurofeedback and neurostim practitioner since 2001. In this talk, I will be comparing and contrasting current stimulation of the brain with light stimulation of the brain. This is because I worked with direct and alternating current stimulation of the brain for many years before deciding to switch to light stimulation because it is superior for many of our purposes. And we shall see how they compare in the talk. The basic intent in low-level energy therapies is to inject a small amount of electromagnetic energy into the brain that hopefully results in a change of state. Then our intent is to repeat these state changes and see if there's a learning effect that results in a change of trait. An important factor here is the use of low-level energies that keeps our risk levels really low. So here are some examples of low-level energy injection into the brain using infrared light, devices that use infrared light, DC and AC current, pulsed electromagnetic fields, and microcurrent, and even ultrasound. And what we've discovered is that even though we keep the energy levels really low in all of these devices and methods, the effect on state changes and learning can be profound. When you take a pill or do a behavioral intervention such as yoga or meditation, or use light on the head, the intent is to create a positive state change. But we are not just interested in state changes, but in learning or trait changes. So we can ask which methods are more effective at creating learning. In some cases, pills have a negative effect on learning. For example, when you have a chemical dependency, the system is not learning at all. The learning is negative. What we've discovered is that when we add low-level energy injection along with other behavioral interventions, the learning effect is accelerated. And in fact, there is no dependency. So direct current stimulation of the brain basically consists of putting a battery to the head. However, the current is carefully controlled to be less than 2 milliamperes, so it is quite safe. TDCS is imprecise in the sense that current flows over wide areas of the head. Back in the 90s, I started playing around with direct current well before some of the early research came out. At that time, we had to make the equipment ourselves and play with it at our own peril. This is some of the equipment I used on myself. I didn't start working with clients until some of the research came out. As this review paper from 2016 discusses, TDCS is very safe when used in the currents recommended below 2 to 4 milliamperes. Simply adding current to the body's cells has many beneficial effects. ATP or energy production goes up dramatically, protein synthesis goes up, amino acid transport goes up, cell signaling increases. And the effect of current follows a bell curve. So as the current increases, initially these beneficial effects increase. But above a certain point, typically in the range of a milliampere, these effects then start to decrease. So it is beneficial to use smaller amounts of current overall than extremely large amounts of current. All right, let's talk about light. So red light and infrared light therapy is coming to a place near you because of its multiple beneficial effects on inflammation, healing, and general energy production in the body. Infrared light is absorbed by the energy powerhouses in the cells, the mitochondria. Specifically, the enzyme cytochrome C oxidase absorbs the infrared light and donates an electron to further the respiration cycle, creating energy in the form of ATP. Just as in the case of microcurrent, there are many beneficial effects of light absorption on cell signaling, nitric oxide release, and so on. However, in the case of light, the effects are stronger and have a wider impact of repairing, restoring, and enhancing the activity of the cells. Generally, there is a decrease in inflammation and an increase in circulation. Surprisingly, your skull is pervious to light. Enough light gets in to have a physiological effect on the brain. So this is a device by Vielight Inc., my research partner, that is designed to deliver infrared light into the brain. Uses LEDs of about 100 milliwatt per centimeter squared power density at a wavelength of light of 810 nanometers. This is another view of the device, also called the neurogamma. TDCS has been shown to be very effective for the treatment of depression. In fact, I frequently use home TDCS machines with clients in support of mood therapy. In contrast, photobiomodulation or light therapy is showing effectiveness in cognitive decline and recovery from traumatic brain injury. I frequently use home units from Vielight with clients in support of cognitive rehab. In 2016, a group from MIT published a study showing that shining flickering light at 40 Hz in the eyes of rats bred to have Alzheimer's reduced plaque in the visual cortex and activated microglial activity. Among other functions, microglia are responsible for cleaning up in the brain. The effects were very frequency specific. 40 Hz worked better than other frequencies. So what if we were to shine infrared light directly into the brain and flicker it 40 times a second? Would that multiply the benefits of shining infrared light onto the brain with the benefits of using 40 Hz light? The neurogamma headset from Vielight has been available in the market for some years now, and it does precisely that. The neurogamma headset is showing promising results in pilot trials of PTSD and cognitive decline, stroke rehab, and other similar conditions. In fact, clinical trials for the FDA approval for adults at risk of Alzheimer's are already underway. Studies show that both TDCS and photobiomodulation can support rapid learning when combined with other tasks. The person does the task while the parts of the brain associated with learning that task are stimulated. Our friends at the University of New Mexico, with a grant from DARPA, showed that students could learn a threat detection game faster when using TDCS than without it. This Star Wars task is the kind of task that drone pilots do when they try to identify threats in enemy territory. This research was repeated with the Vielight neurogamma, and the results were in fact superior to using TDCS. Before we talk about meditation, we should talk about transcranial alternating current. Transcranial alternating current is current that travels back and forth between the electrodes at a rate called the frequency, and rises and falls in the form of a wave shape, which can vary widely, such as a sine wave, a square wave, a sawtooth wave, etc. Transcranial alternating current has an almost infinite parameter space because the wave shape can vary widely, the frequency can vary widely, and transcranial alternating current stimulation is a very frontier area of research. Typically, the electronic signature of the brain, or EEG, is divided into bands of frequencies, like delta, theta, low beta, beta, gamma, and so on. So one way we can alter a person's state is by altering their brain waves by feeding them these small AC signals at different frequencies. So here is a basic question. If you stimulate the brain with TSCS and increase the frequency of stimulation, how does it alter a subject's experience? Turns out that generally speaking, as you increase the frequency of stimulation, the energy level goes up, awareness of the body drops or goes down, the person feels more aroused, and the focus increases. These results are similar to what we see when we do neurofeedback to reward these frequencies. Here is a table that summarizes the effects of frequency entrainment between 1 to 100 Hz. As you can see, there's a change between the low frequencies, the mid-range, and the high frequencies. It turns out that we can affect a person's subjective state by dialing in a certain set of frequencies. Most of the work with EEG in the past has focused on frequencies in the range of 1 to 40 Hz because high frequencies don't get through the skull very well. They get attenuated, and the equipment we were using was not sensitive enough to measure them accurately. Research with cortical recordings, in which electrodes are placed directly on the brain when the skull is cut open, shows that the brain produces high frequencies in the range of 40 to 200 Hz, or even higher, as part of its normal functioning. These high frequencies seem to be significant in the high-performing brain. Also, ingestion of psychedelics such as DMT has been associated with higher power and higher synchrony in the high frequencies. For example, long-term meditators and high-performing mathematicians and musicians have been shown to produce more high-frequency gamma than controls, both in their meditations as well as at rest. I like to think of frequencies as an index to states of experience, as well as how we experience our sense of self. The mid-range is the usual intellectual, social self-functioning with its limited range of states or experience. The lower frequencies take us to the altered state realm of the body, the pre-personal, and the earth energies. The high frequencies are connected with spirit, intuition, superconscious, and the transpersonal realms. This picture is a bit simplistic because altered state experiences are generally a combination of low and high frequencies, and also there are specific timing considerations, but this is a good start. Keeping this knowledge of frequency in mind, we can ask the question, can we come up with a balanced mind stimulation protocol? One that creates a high-functioning mind with high mindfulness and releases the grip of the narrative self. Just as Maxwell Cade, Anna Wise, and Judith Pennington discovered in their research on the awakened mind brainwave patterns, we are discovering that it will take a combination of low and high frequency stimulation to achieve this kind of state. If you want to stimulate the brain at high frequencies, then infrared stimulation is the best way to do it. Neither TSCS nor neurofeedback will work well for high frequency stimulation, entrainment, or training. So Vielight made us an experimental unit. It has 8 LEDs, and we can pulse these LEDs all the way from 0.5 Hertz to 10,000 Hertz. This allows for global high-frequency stimulation of the brain, and we can vary the stimulation over a wide range of frequencies. Before we proceed, we should make sure that pulsing infrared light into the brain actually moves the brain waves in the direction that we might want. Vielight has just published a paper showing that 40 Hertz stimulation of the brain actually increases the power of the EEG across a spectrum of frequencies from alpha to beta to gamma. And so this is very much in the direction that we desire. When the brain is stimulated at high frequencies, there are some common subjective experiences that are reported. In general, there's feelings of expansion, increased self-observation, either equanimity or positive feelings, and many other possible states of feeling vibration and energy. Not everyone has positive experiences. People can report discomfort if the brain cannot handle these high energy states. One way to support high energy states is to stimulate the brain with low frequencies and calm the system before moving to the high frequencies. We can think of a mindful state as a balancing of opposite factors. In a high mindful state, there's a balance between calmness and energy, equanimity and bliss, concentration and investigation. Some of these factors, such as calmness, are supported by low-frequency stimulation, while others, such as joy, are supported by high-frequency stimulation. In general, we are testing combinations of frequencies to help people deepen and for them to explore meditative states of experience. Not everyone experiences major state changes with this kind of low-level energy stimulation. However, experienced meditators almost always find that the stimulation nudges them to relive old experiences or takes them to a new place of inner exploration. The basic idea behind such a device is to increase the depth, breadth, and flexibility of access to mind states beyond our usual everyday functioning. We are currently running a pilot study on photobiomodulation and meditation, which will recruit long-term meditators for 3 sessions. 1 session for selecting their particular individualized frequency set, an active session and a SAM session, pre and post EEG recordings, and measures of meditation mood and sleep. If you're interested, you can contact me at sanjayman@mail.com. The locations are Tucson and the Bay Area. I'm also an advisor for the Sensei startup that has created a closed-loop device that combines neurofeedback with photobiomodulation and HRV training for home use by consumers. You can look forward to test driving one of these in the future.
I'm Alan Macy, This presentation explores recent artworks supported by the Santa Barbara Center of Art, Science, and Technology, SBCast, and associated work performed in collaboration with the Computational Arts Department at York University. Alan Macy is affiliated with SBCast. Mark David Hosale is chair of the Computational Arts Department at York University. The jewelry shown here was fabricated at SBCast. This jewelry monitors our participants' electrocardiogram and translates that energy to present in the form of a pulsing red light. SBCast is exploring the domain described by Marshall McLuhan in 1969, the electronically induced technological extensions of our central nervous systems are immersing us in a whirlpool of information movement and are thus enabling man to incorporate within himself the whole of mankind. A significant development occurred in 1876. The telephone can be considered an extension of the human nervous system by virtue of its ability to practically extend the reach of the human voice as words are spoken in real time. The translational speed of the telephone was able to match the subtle movements of the vocal tract. The vocal tract requires about 8,000 bits per second to be properly characterized. In comparison, the telegraph could only send about 8 bits per second. By 1901, as these submarine cables show, the telephone practically extended the real-time reach of the human nervous system to wrap around the world. In 1876, the world's population was approximately 1.3 billion people. Today, the world's population stands at 7.8 billion people, a factor of 6 increase, and in the last 144 years, 6.5 billion people have been added to planet Earth. Communication speeds have increased at a far faster rate. This graphic poster by Victor Arruda explains our human dilemma well. We are communicating at ever-increasing rates, but do we understand each other any better? Around the same time that Victor Arruda was making his telephone graphic about spoken language and the language of the heart, James Russell was putting together a theory about the circumplex model of affect. Affect is the physical reflection of emotion in the body. Boredom, happiness, displeasure, and joy, for example, appeared to map to specific objective physiological measures. Here is a contemporary conceptual example of these types of measures employed in a virtuality. As the participant walks through the virtual world, here they encounter a hallway of yellow doors. In this example, the participant experiences a drop in both valence and motivational state. Dropping valence in purple means displeasure. Dropping motivational state in green means the experience is more threatening. Clearly, this is not a positive experience for the participant. Leaving virtual reality behind, we return to SBCast. SBCast is an arts residency that orients to the juxtaposition of art, science, and technology. Art is concerned with subjective or personal expression. Science is concerned with objective or shared expression, and technology is a method or tool utilized to extend sensory perception or physical reach. Here is a story SBCast attempts to embrace. Imagine a community that is both hamlet and crossroads. There is provision for residency, development, and socializing. There are resources to support many kinds of work. The hamlet's physical infrastructure is designed to be sustainable. Energy comes from renewable resources, water is sourced from the local environment, and there are community gardens. The hamlet embraces the oral tradition to communicate cultural nuance. Mainly, there are very few rules. People can be by themselves or they can share with others. The hamlet has regular wider community expressions where it hosts art, music, presentations, and performance exhibitions, such as Dr. and Mistress's Megavolts Tesla Coil performance as pictured here. There are residencies available for travelers who bring interesting expertise and insights to share. The hamlet is a small part of a much larger network, a microcosm of a multitude of hamlets and crossroads across the world. This SBcast art project is called Biometric Campfire. This project explores the physiological expressions of the heartbeats of 6 individuals. As heartbeats synchronize, which sometimes they do, the campfire light pillar grows brighter. This project involves the translation of the electromyogram of a supremely talented dancer, Quentin Robinson. The electromyogram varies in accordance to activation of Quentin's striated muscle groupings. The electrocardiogram is also collected and superimposed into the real-time measures. The signals are run through a range of guitar pedals for processing. This SBcast project, called Plume Cathedra, is a biomimicry-inspired effort. The wings of the papasan chair move back and forth to changes in the center of gravity of the chair. The center of gravity changes in accordance to breathing. As one inspires while sitting in the chair, the wings open up and the light glows brighter. Upon expiration, the wings close and the light dims. The gentleman sitting on the left holds an analog of the woman's heart sitting on the right. This project, called Heart in Hand, translates the beating motion and intensity of one participant's heart to an external heart, containing haptic transducers to faithfully permit the relocation of one's heart to some point distant. Here is extraordinary poet, rapper, and artist Ben Ramos, revealing himself through his story and the emotional and motivational substrate that supports those words.
I am the ghost that I'm running from, hidden in the shadows of a past from which I thought was done. And this is what it takes to make the same mistakes, labeled as a fake. It's not too late, it's just a rattle. Don't get bitten by the snake. So many expectations, think less, listen, learn. Stop going crazy, drink water, eat healthier, make the voices go away, pretend that they don't run my life, pretend that I have confidence, believe that I deserve this night, believe that I deserve love, whether or not I love myself, and whether or not I think I need it, I gotta go out and find some help, because whether or not I know the answers, I still need to know myself. My strength is hidden in a bottle that's still sitting on a shelf.
Here is The Heart Space, a collaboration hosted in part by SBcast. Dave Zabowski, G. Staub, Dominique Riebel, and Alex Stahl have created an experience that permits a holographic rendering of the heart's electromagnetic field as it sweeps out of the body with each beat. Another heart-based project, complete with a generative Max MSP-based music composition design by Adam Scott, acts to utilize the participants' R-to-R interval data and R-wave energy to seed a musical composition that is a sonic fingerprint of the participant's heart. SBCAS's rich collaboration with York University's Computational Arts Department began with a brilliant workshop hosted by Mark David Hosale, Erica Batdorf, Kate Digby, and Alan Macy. The workshop was titled Movement and Emotion as a Computational Interface. Equipment was provided by Biopac Systems, and participants employed physiological measurement systems to create a series of compelling and provocative artworks. Out of the workshop, the team formed PACHIS, or Performance, Art, and Cyber Interoceptive Systems Collaboration. Current collaborative work involving the PACHIS team is Search for Simurgh, a performance referencing a magical bird from Persian mythology and an orienting allegory for the life of Roya Movafeg. The most recent collaboration involving Alan Macy and Mark David Hosale is a telecommunications project involving the measurement of valence and arousal from participants, and this data is used to visually and acoustically modulate memories represented by media streams. This data is then piped to other locations on the planet to collect and superimpose more modulated memories in search of its final destination. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to present our work at The Science of Consciousness, and we are forever indebted to both Stuart and Abby.
Namaha. My name is Raja Choudry, and I'm here in an unusual role because I'm a student of consciousness, but from a very unusual perspective, from the psychological perspective of Tantra and Sri Vidya and Trika. And I started life as an architect in London, and I studied at the Architectural Association. And I became an architect, and then I became a digital creative director in New York, and I built kiosk networks and websites and all kinds of wonderful things. And I became a filmmaker as well, and my films have been seen all over the world. I'm producing a new film for PBS on the history of how Indian wisdom came to America. But my parallel life has been an explorer of consciousness. And I came to consciousness accidentally. I'm what you could call an accidental mystic, though I'm probably an atheist. And the way I came to consciousness was that I discovered through hallucinogens and plant medicine a vast universe when I was about 28 years old. And this opened up a series of experiences for me that led me to begin to believe that if I was to pursue this inner training or inner shift in consciousness, I could expand my mind and I could discover portals into other states of being that were not ordinarily available to most people. And I'd seen them in the states of hallucinogenic states of consciousness, but that was not enough. And I took it upon myself because I'd come from a Kali and tantric background in my family, even though I'd been an atheist most of my life. And I started looking at the history of what is now we call Kundalini and Trika and Tantra. And I took initiations and I discovered a whole parallel life in my early 30s that led me to this point. And the study of Indian wisdom that I discovered was not religion, it was psychology and neuroscience. And what I realized very early on that was that the ancient seers and seekers and rishis of India were actually experimenting with consciousness. And if you look back at the Rig Veda, you see this idea of the elemental, looking at nature, looking at the five elements, looking at wind and water, and then trying to see it internal to ourselves and the macrocosm and the microcosm within you. And so you can see these early attempts at psychology that were going on in 1500 BC and in the valleys of North India and South India. And then you find that we discover in the later stages through the Upanishads and Buddhism and Jainism, a psychological effort goes inwards, and we start talking about that there is a vast consciousness behind the whole universe, almost like a panpsychic god of Spinoza that seems to be sitting there, who we are in the play of that divine mind. And the human effort is to free itself from this binds of karma and body and physical limitations to go towards that mind. But then something very unusual happens in India around the 4th and 5th and 6th centuries AD. A series of experiments begins to happen at the fringes of Indian society, outside the main Brahminical and city civilizations and Buddhist civilizations. And these dialogues, these experiments, are what we today call Tantra. There was a series of books and treatises written called the Agams that led to a kind of dialogue between, very strangely, between the human being, the human body, the human consciousness, the human limited consciousness, and the potential of that vast consciousness that seemed to surround all human beings, that they seemed to feel that we were part of something bigger, collectively or in nature or at the source. And these dialogues came to be known as Tantra, what we now know as Tantra. And this was a vast experiment that happened at the fringes of Indian society. And still, if you say the word Tantra in India, it's considered to be extremely fringe. And it includes Shaktiism, the worship of the sacred feminine, Shiva, the cults of Trika. All of these are parts of this idea. So what happened was that this great dialogue starts to happen. The early scientists or neuroscientists of India in the 5th, 6th centuries were exploring this idea that we were embodied consciousness, and the only way we could have an experience of the other was through expanding our own consciousness. And you can imagine that they did it earlier through soma and hallucinogens, and then through detachment from reality and the body through yoga and Buddhism and all these teachings and Upanishads and Maya and the illusion of life. And then you get to this point where the body becomes sacred. We actually can awaken and expand our consciousness in the body. And this is where Tantra comes into being. And in particular, there was one set of writings called the Rudra Yamala, where one particular teaching was written called the Vijnana Bhairav Tantra, where body, Shakti, energy, matter, particles, neurons, the brain, the being, is having a conversation with the extent of human consciousness, what lies beyond. And they call this dialogue the dialogue between Bhairavi, the sacred feminine of energy and matter that seems to run our lives and everything in the whole universe, all the particles, all the waves, everything that's going on is called Bhairavi, and Bhairav, or sometimes called Shakti and Shiva. And Bhairav, which is a wonderful word, and if any of you have been to Tibet or Nepal or Bhutan, you always see these kind of ogre teeth kind of fierce, monstrous looking character called Bhairav. And Bhairav literally means the gatekeeper at the limit of human consciousness. That means that if I stand at the precipice of my senses, my being, my all of these things, and I come to the edge, if I am about to fall off that edge, the experience of that terror, yet that awe and curiosity is called Bhairav. So the dance is between me, little me with my consciousness, my senses, my fantasies, my illusions, my limited nature of observation that I have, and the edge of consciousness which I might just fall into. And if I can have that dialogue, the tantrics believe that an entire universe of potentiality opens up for us. So I'm calling this the Conversations with the Void, and it's the name of a series of courses and books and things I want to do right now called the Conversations with the Void. And I want to share that with you because it has a lot to do with, a lot of dialogues going on today in panpsychism, in Spinozan theories of mind, and we need to consider the fact of the idea of a non-local consciousness not being necessarily the case here. What they were doing was they were expanding awareness and attention of human consciousness to a point where we came to a tipping point. And if we go over that threshold, we suddenly realize that we become an observer watching all consciousness being. This was the great revelation that occurred in Tantra, which is that I am both the observer and the particles and waves and being that is doing the actions that seem to be observed, looking up at that observer and reaching towards it. So the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra is a great dialogue. So the body, Bhairavi, Shakti, asks Shiva, asks Bhairav, what are you? When you close your eyes and meditate, what do you see? What lies beyond all these rituals and processes of being human, of my mind, my awareness, my dream state, my deep states of consciousness? What is there? And so Bhairav, consciousness, is having a dialogue with Bhairavi. And instead of explaining what that is, Bhairav teaches her 112 haiku type little meditations to go into the void and become the observer. And that void they call the Turiya state. So what we have is that in the Indian psychology of Tantra and Yoga and Vedanta, this idea of 4 states of consciousness exist. The first state, called Jagrat, is all about the senses, the body, the biology. Jagrat means the waking state. That means that the world I perceive with my senses, my attention, my seeing, my hearing, my senses, all of this I create a construct of a reality around me. But I realize soon that that's not reality, that there is more that my consciousness is not perceiving at that level of vibration. And there's this whole other world I live in, which we call swapna, swapna, S-W-A-P-N-A, swapna, which means that the world I construct in my mind, the fantasies, the dreams, the future, the past, the memories, all of that, I'm never fully in the moment of attention observing phenomena. I am always in the future or in the past or in some fantasy. And then they say there's a third level of consciousness, which is kind of deep rest, tranquility, which is like sleep, deep sleep, where the mind stops chattering, the body stops overactivity, and I go into a kind of tranquility. And in that state, I begin to explore the expansion of my consciousness. So it's like a deep state of automatic being in a way. Now, the tantrics went further and they said there is a 4th level of consciousness called the Turiya state. And that Turiya state is that complete awareness, expanded consciousness, so that I push the boundaries of my ability of attention, of interconnection, of using my mind to perceive other realities. And this Turiya state, something happens in that Turiya state. I go into the void, this vast no thing, no mind, no state, shunya, the nothingness, and I become the observer watching reality. Then I become the creator, the designer, and I become beyond space time, observing my being, observing all being, and I dissolve into that vast nothingness. For over 22 years, I've been doing this experiment. And I learned very quickly through many techniques of Kriya Yoga and Kundalini Tantra and Shakti to hack my consciousness and go into that Turiya state that allows me to become the observer, the Shunya. And when I first had these awakenings, it was first very physical, and it was in the body. Something called Kundalini awakening occurs, and your spinal cord erupts into all kinds of activity, and you think you're going mad, but it's quite wonderful actually. Much better than any acid trip I ever had. But what I realized was that I was moving towards a vast expansion of my consciousness, of my mind. And I've seen it over the last 10, 15 years that my ability to learn, my ability to share, my ability to teach, my focus, my attention has expanded greatly. And so what I want to do is, and I've been doing this with the Shift Network for a couple of years now, is I teach people how to enter that Turiya state, that vast nothingness. And I'm going to take you on a little trip just now for about 5-10 minutes where we'll explore some of the verses of the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra together. And I want you to relax. So relax and just sit with me as we work on coming to the Turiya state, this awareness state of consciousness in the void, where we become the observer. We're going to still our bodies, we're going to still our mind, and we're going to relax. And I'll read you the first verse of the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra that begins the whole journey for us. So the first verse goes, O Shakti, whose nature is breath, at the point you leave the heart and travel up, Saha. And at the point you enter and travel down, Hum. In that full state, become one with me. So as you can see from this diagram, there are two places. One is called the Dvadashanta, just above your head, like an entry portal for consciousness to come and go, and the vast external consciousness that you can tap into, and one is in your heart center called the Hridaya, and they're both 12 fingers up and down from your nose. So if you think about it, 12 fingers above is your portal, and 12 fingers below your nose is your heart center. So you want to imagine, just sit with me now, that you're going to bring in a kind of conscious energy by breathing in as if it's pouring into this little portal above your head. Hum is the sound you hear coming in. Hum. And sa is the breath going out. So as you bring it in, imagine pouring in wonderful consciousness into you from all around you. Hum. Turn it around at the heart center and release it back into the nothingness. Sa. Hum. And sa. Hum. And sa. So just don't try and say it, just hear it in your mind. Hum. The hum is like a nasal vibration of breathing in. And sa. If you imagine, when you breathe in, it's like a hum sound. And when you release, it's like a sigh going out. Sa. Hum. You can close your eyes and imagine it coming into the portal just above your head, called the portal of bliss, 12 fingers above your nose, coming into your heart center, turning it around and releasing it. Now in the next verse we see that we stop the sound of hum and sa. Stay with me, just relax and stay relaxed. And again, coming in through the portal, it says here, in the space where your breath comes in and in the space where it goes out, focus your mind on those two spaces and the void will be revealed. So just relax and imagine there's a vast space above your head, like sky just above your head. And there's a wonderful lotus in your heart that's going to open, and we're going to breathe between the two. So you take the breath in. No hum inside, just bring it in from above. Breathe it into your heart center. Turn it around and breathe it out. Again, in and out. In and out. In and out. And relax. So now the next stage is to hold it and observe the deep consciousness while you hold your breath. So the verse goes, after all the breath goes out, hold it out. After all the breath comes in, hold it in. And in those two states, experience peaceful bliss. It's called Shanta, peaceful bliss. And then absolute peace comes and I am revealed. That's Bhairav saying, I am revealed. So if you come back to me, just watch. Take a deep breath in from the portal above. Bring it into your heart center. Hold it there for as long as you can, maybe a count of 10, and just hold it and put your mind at the heart center. And now, after a count of 10, let it out. And this time hold it out just above your head, gazing upwards into your head. And bring it in and hold it at your chest. And you start feeling a kind of tingling, good feeling in your heart when you do this. A kind of bliss will begin to come. And now release it again. And you'll feel a vast sky forming above your head. Bring it in. And the longer you hold it, the more all thoughts will stop. You will go into a no thought state. And you'll start feeling a vast openness, as if you are observing a tranquility, an ocean of bliss, and you're just watching. Your body is stopping, your mind chatter is stopping, and you're just relaxed, and you breathe out, and gazing up into the dome of your head, you just relax. Breathe in again. And hold it in your heart center and relax. So now I want you to breathe into your heart center, and I'll just guide you into how to experience the void. Just come into your heart center and sit with me and imagine that there's nothing in front of you, nothing behind you, nothing above, nothing below. Just close your eyes and experience that. And imagine that all there is this heart center and a kind of void there. And all your senses are collapsing into it. Your sound, my voice is collapsing into it. All the visions in your mind are collapsing into it. The smells, the feelings on your hand, on your face are all falling into it. And I want you to just relax and imagine that it's floating like a feather in your heart. And you're in this vast, tranquil space. No skin, no flesh, no bones, no nothing. You're just light as a feather. And you feel your heart tingling. And imagine that you're sitting in this vast space, the Turiya state. This is the taste of the void. And just by sitting in this state, your consciousness begins to expand. Your mind goes still, your body is still, and all you're feeling is a lightness in your heart. And just relax and observe the tranquility of this state. Now, I can't do all this today, but if you want to continue this state of consciousness, you can join me on one of my courses at the link below. And the most beautiful teaching of the Vigyan Bhairav, the most beautiful teaching of the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra says that in this state, in anything you do, walking or talking or laughing or working, move your mind to that heart center over and over again. And each moment then becomes a chance to be born again. So with each hum, you can be born again. With each sa, you dissolve. And so it's like being born, hum, and dying every breath. 21,500 times a day, breathing in, breathing out, and becoming aware that anywhere you look, you can sense this consciousness. You can just feel it. You can see it. You can see it everywhere. And the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra teaches us to hack our consciousness so that we become observers of our own consciousness in action. We transcend space and time and we begin to observe. So if you want to take this further with me, do join me at www.1000sunsacademy.com, and who knows where this could go. Namaha and blessings to all of you. Thank you.
Hi, today I'll be talking about exploring how virtual reality can be enhanced for improved user experiences. My name is Layla Bozgeyikli. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Arizona School of Information. Here is our lab's website. So the research areas and courses I taught are virtual reality, human-computer interaction, and video game development. So here's our outline. First, I'll give a brief introduction to extended reality in case you're not familiar with that. Then we'll talk about the core characteristics and application areas of extended reality. Finally, I'll give you some examples of research at the XRG lab about virtual reality and perception. So let's start with what extended reality is. It refers to all real and virtual combined environments, and there are mainly three categories of that. So virtual reality refers to experiences that are completely digital. Augmented reality refers to a mix with information overlays on top of real-world imagery. And then mixed reality is a merge of real and digital mediums, but instead of 2D information overlays with 3D superimposed content. And extended reality refers to, usually abbreviated with XR, refers to a superset that includes the entire spectrum from the complete real to the complete virtual. Although it has gained popularity recently, virtual reality is actually not new. The first systems were developed in 1960s and progressed since then. So when we look at the core characteristics of virtual reality, which makes it appealing for various users today, the first one that comes to mind is 3D visualization. Of course, we can have 3D visualization in flat screens too, but in virtual reality, we can exploit it a little bit more, because we have 360 imagery, and we can give the users a view of an environment in 360 degrees so that they have a better sense of presence, such as if they were visiting that space, as we see in this video. And we do real-time motion tracking with most of the virtual reality systems, so we track users' movements and then we can translate into virtual experiences, such as the player we see here. They are swinging their arms, and with their arm gestures, they can interact with the virtual object as if they were slicing those fruit with their arm swinging motions. And we have spatialized audio, meaning that similar to real life, we can distinguish between different places from where a sound is coming. And since we have 360 imagery, we can exploit that a bit more in virtual reality. Another appealing core characteristic of virtual reality is its ability to provide direct, purposeful experiences, meaning that when applied to learning, it can provide a more experiential learning experience as compared to more abstract ones, such as text or picture-based descriptions. Of course, we know that VR is big in entertainment, but there are also other beneficial areas where VR is widely applied to. Let's take a look at those. VR has been used in empathy for making people understand challenges that are faced by some specific populations, such as individuals with autism. So in this example, a user sees the world through the eyes of an individual with autism, so to better understand how they can get overwhelmed. VR also has been used in medicine. For example, an experienced surgeon may record their surgery in 360, and then medical students can practice using this recording. Other uses in healthcare are, for example, fear and anxiety therapy. If a person has a fear for something, with an accompanying therapist, they can practice overcoming this fear or anxiety by being exposed to it virtually first. It has also been used for patient visits where if their loved ones are far away, patients can get virtual visits from their loved ones. Training is another area, especially vocational training, where VR has been used widely recently. Walmart is an example of that. They have adopted virtual reality for their trainings widely recently, and they share seeing impressive results with that. So instead of handling an angry customer in person, their associates first get trained in virtual reality, and then they are better prepared to handle those situations. Other areas for training are space missions, for example, before sending astronauts to space, NASA, which contributed a lot to the development of virtual reality, prepares them using virtual simulators. Rehabilitation is another area where VR has been used. For PTSD, for example, exposure therapy, similar to the fear therapy we discussed. Exposure therapy is another application area where they can recreate the events that created stress in that person, and again with an accompanying therapist, they can work through resolving those unpleasant memories. Reconstruction of events is another area where VR has been used. For example, in courtrooms, nowadays crime scenes are reconstructed in virtual reality, and people go through the sequence of events as how they remember using those virtual scenes. So in industry, architectural visualization is an area where VR has been widely used, mainly because of its ability to provide 360 experiences. Again, when you have a building in VR, then you have the ability to walk around and see it in 360. Those were the main areas VR has been used widely recently, other than entertainment. But we talked about VR's main strengths to be 360 visualization, highly embodied interactions, and such. And that brings us to perception, which is an area where VR has been researched a lot. Those are some previous studies about perspective taking and VR. Using VR, ageism can be reduced by exposing individuals to self-images that were aged by processing, and as they encounter their future selves that are virtually aged, then people become more compassionate towards aged people. Improving sense of empathy towards challenged populations, as in the example we talked before about individuals with autism and understanding the challenges they face. And also, when they increase their sense of empathy, participants' tendency of helping others were increased in the participants. So after the experiment, they were more prone to helping the research assistant that dropped something on the floor, let's say. And also using VR, again similar to the first example, showing people their aged virtual selves. So using virtual avatars that look like them, but virtually aging them, their future financial decision making could be improved. So when they talked with their virtually aged selves, they then were more prone to make future savings, to save money for the future, because they had a better connection with their future, and instead of thinking that the future will never come, they then started to anticipate it a bit more and wanted to be more prepared. Now let me talk a bit about our lab and the research we conduct there. So we are interested in three main categories of research at the XRG lab of the UA's iSchool. First one is exploring novel forms of interactions and enhancements in extended reality to improve user experience or performance, or both. And we are also interested in using extended reality technologies for beneficial purposes, similar to the examples we talked about, such as improving individuals' lives in terms of better education, health, or well-being. It can be training, accessibility, empathy, awareness, and entertainment. The third category that we are interested in our research is how we can blur the boundary between the real and virtual worlds so that the technology won't become an abstraction but become more seamless. So a recent research of ours included dynamic tangible user interfaces in VR, and we wanted to explore that mainly because embodied tangible interaction through familiar objects had been studied and was known to increase presence and spatial learning in virtual technologies. And also it was known that the sense of presence, meaning that the sense of feeling of being somewhere in a virtual environment, even though the user is having a virtual experience, feeling like as if they were really there, increases as the technological medium becomes more invisible, similar to blurring the boundaries that we talked about, because the user notices the medium there less when that happens. And our aim was to introduce dynamic tangible objects into the core experience in virtual reality to make interaction more natural and to make the system more seamless. So to do that, we developed a custom-made tangible familiar objects. We picked soccer ball, and we constructed using virtual reality system markers a custom soccer ball. And we wanted to incorporate embodied interaction similar to the video we saw, slicing fruits with arm swinging motions. And the users were supposed to shoot the ball with their feet. And in the tangible version, the user viewed the tangible ball's real-time virtual rendering inside the headset. So we had a virtual counterpart to the tangible ball, since we were tracking it the whole time in real time, we rendered it virtually and the user viewed it inside the headset but played in a tangible form in the tangible version. So this one is an image of the experiment version. Here we have the user's view inside the headset, and then the participant wore foot markers. Here's a ball. We had a non-slippery pad to have the ball rest on at the beginning easily, and the users wore virtual reality headsets, as we see here. Now let's take a look at the video of the experiment version with the tangible artifact. Now the user is bringing the ball to the initial resting position. And their goal is to kick the ball once. They're allowed to kick the ball only once and then make the ball stop at the target position. Now they're trying again.
So hard to do.
So that was the experiment version with the tangible ball. And in our control version, there was no tangible ball, but still the virtual rendering was inside the headset and the user interacted with the virtual ball instead. So they kicked the air, there was nothing tangible that they could feel. And they interacted with a virtual ball by viewing its virtual rendering from inside the headset. Again, their goal was the same: kick the ball only once and try to make it rest at the target position. So we had 40 participants and we conducted a between subjects experiment. The participants were college students with no prior virtual reality experience to eliminate any prior familiarity bias. They first completed a tutorial in the virtual reality system to eliminate any learning effect, and then they completed trials with random target positions. The initial position was always the same, but the target position changed. We were expecting more accuracy with the tangible ball since they had a better sense of interacting with the object instead of interacting with a virtual one. We were expecting increased presence also. So for game scores, as expected, tangible version yielded higher scores significantly as compared to the virtual one, as we see on the bar chart here. And here are visualizations of their trials with the tangible and virtual version. Tangible was a bit more accurate, and they were able to make the ball rest at the center, very center ring, so the ring was three-tiered, if you remember, a bit higher with the tangible version. So the presence didn't differ between two versions as expected. We were expecting the tangible version to give a better sense of presence since they had a tangible connection, but it didn't differ significantly between the two versions. The simplicity of the task can be a factor in that, but further studies are needed to tease out what caused that. And we also looked at cyber sickness. There was no difference between the two versions, but we weren't expecting any difference in cyber sickness too. So overall cyber sickness was very low for both of the versions, and we weren't expecting any difference in that. And in experiments like that, user comments give us a lot of insight into what's going on and how their experience was with the system. So for the tangible version, one of the participants said, I liked how it felt like I was actually kicking something. So even though there wasn't any significant difference in presence scores between the two versions, some participants mentioned their liking of actually interacting with something tangible. And of course, this was a between study design, so they only interacted with one version of the system. And they weren't able to compare the tangible with the virtual, since it was between subjects. Another participant said, I really liked being able to gauge the strength of my kicks and adjust accordingly for the next attempt. Again, for the tangible version. For the virtual version, one participant complained that there was an unusual feeling of inconsistency between their expectations and the outcome. So they thought by repeating the same actions for a couple of times, they were pretty confident that they could kick the ball and stop it on the target, but it wasn't the case with the virtual version. So with the tangible version, they were able to interact with a bit more ease as compared to the virtual one. And our observations as a research team were, although the participants weren't instructed to try to score high, they were a bit competitive, and they tried to score high, and they were disappointed in themselves if they scored low, if they weren't able to hit the target. And some participants tended to cheat. As I mentioned, they were only allowed to shoot the ball once, even though the instructions were very, very clear on that. Some of them shot the ball more, or some of them tried to stop the ball by force at the center of the target. So they tended to cheat, some of the participants. So this was an example of one of our recent research projects where we explored how we can play with different forms of interaction to make user experience more comfortable, and we have some other ongoing research along similar lines. So if you are interested, check out our lab's website, and if you have any questions about my video presentation today, please feel free to send an email, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your virtual conference. Thanks for watching.
Hi, my name is Aaron Oldenburg. I teach at the University of Baltimore. And my research is in experimental game development. I create work for art exhibitions, and I tend to work in series of experiments. In the past, I've worked in creating games that were inspired by sound art theory, by the rules of religion, and most recently in altered states of consciousnness. And this is sort of the work I'm going to be presenting today is sort of the final in the latter series. It's as it says on the screen, a multiplayer virtual reality meditation circle. And my preferred way of presenting this would just be as an installation where everyone could participate in this, which in a way you can, but I was told, and I agree, that most likely the majority of people in this conference don't have the materials at home to participate in this. So in a second, I'm going to give you information on how to download this game and participate online if you want to do that. And for those of you who can't, or for those of you who aren't interested, or those of you who don't know if you're interested yet, you aren't sold on it, you can continue to watch this presentation. But basically what this project is a game where all of the participants start in the same procedurally generated space in a desert environment. And each person, their world starts to diverge. The environment has sort of a simple AI as a simulation of environmental consciousness, where it observes the player and changes its moods based on what the player is doing. And so all the players are in the same space, but their spaces start to look very different. And it's sort of, it's sort of similar to, a meditation experience or an ayahuasca circle, where everyone is technically in the same space, but their experiences become more intensely personal and personalized and different. But throughout the experience, you can see each other. You just don't see, you just don't see how their experience is changing and different. So I hope that several of you can try this out, participate, and get a sense of this experience. But I will be showing gameplay footage. I'll be showing footage of people playing this in a gallery setting. So let's look. So this presentation, what I'll be showing in the video itself. Next, you'll be seeing a download page with instructions on how to play it if you choose. If you don't want to, following that, I'll be showing some gameplay footage, and then I'll be going in sort of the theory and the process behind creating this project. So the requirements for playing this are a little bit steep. There's a virtual reality version and a flat non-VR version. The VR version has a very specific requirement. You need a Windows machine and an Oculus Rift. By the time you're seeing this, I might have it available for the Quest. I'm hoping to. You can go to the page nerves.earth, which will take you to my itch.io page. which is a site for downloading video games. For the non-VR version, you can play it on Windows, Mac, or Linux, but you do need an Xbox controller, Xbox One or Xbox 360. There are keyboard controls, but I only put them there for my own testing, and I think it is a really a lesser experience to play it with the keyboard. I don't recommend it. Part of the I think part of the experience of playing this game is figuring out the controls, and to do that, it requires the constraints of a controller, where you have, you don't have, I don't know how many keys are in a keyboard, 50. You don't have 50 keys to poke around on. You have a very set constrained interface that you can kind of play around with and figure out how it maps to your body in the game. And of course with VR, you have the touch controllers, and it maps to the arms in your game, map to how your arms are moving in the environment. So one of the things you can do in the game is you can draw, and that's one of the things that the environment watches, is your manner of drawing, how fast you draw, how tentatively you draw, how long you draw, and that maps really nicely to your movement in space in virtual reality, and somewhat less nicely to the controller. But definitely, if you're trying to use a keyboard, it's not that nice at all. But if you're really curious, you can send me an email, and I can tell you what the keyboard controls are. Actually, I think if you hold down the space bar, it might still show you how they map to the controller. But again, not recommended, and if you don't feel like playing, then just watch the rest of this video. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about what you saw in the gameplay footage just now. You saw a mix of sort of installation view and screen capture from individual devices. A lot of the screen capture I do on my own, so it's a little weird to try to capture the multiplayer aspect of it. But the ideal installation view that I had in mind was multiple VR stations and cushions on the ground. I used yoga bolsters in some of these installations, where all the participants are facing each other, ideally in a circle of 5 or so. But it's really hard to get that many VR devices. So the most I've had is 2 facing each other. But there's a number of different ways that it can be displayed. Here they're in this image at Game On Festival, they're in chairs, but they are somewhat facing each other. And here they're on the ground, but this is an installation where there's only one currently at a player at a time on the VR station. There were in other parts of the room, there were non-VR flat stations where they could see each other. And so the players in the game, they can see each other, but generally they can't speak. They can see each other's drawings. Here on the left, you can see the image that appears when a new person joins the game. Here's the image that happens when somebody leaves the game. So one of my favorite things about having this in an installation is hearing the conversations between 2 people who are in the same room, because obviously, even though they can't speak in the game world, they can speak in the room. And people just trying to figure out what the other person sees. Are they seeing the same thing that I'm seeing? And trying to figure out like what elements of the environment are the same and what things are diverging. So the game mechanics tend to relate to how the player controls their body. So they can extend their legs, they can breathe in and out, and the breathing rhythm can cause things to happen in the environment. They can move things around. The environment can enter altered states of the environment's consciousness. And you'll see there's a little, sometimes there's symbols above the players' heads, and that's really the only inkling you get looking at another player's avatar of what's going on inside of their landscape, is that the animated symbols above their head will change. And of course, drawing is the most important thing that they can do in the game, because there's so many different ways for the environment to interpret what they're doing, and that's the number of moods that the environment can go into are more in the way they react to the drawings. So the way that the environmental consciousness reacts to the player's actions is it enters a mood, and the mood states are somewhat abstract, and they're represented through weather and other sort of environmental changes. At one point, the players had the ability to lie down, but there were too many problems with the camera, and so you can't lie down anymore. Some images of watching another player draw. The footage in the video shows the drawings sort of disappearing really quickly, and you'll notice in the actual gameplay, if you're able to play it, that the drawing stays on the screen a lot longer, so you can draw sort of more meaningful images. Another mechanic that you might have noticed is this sort of out-of-body exploration. You'll see some sort of abandoned structures and human habitations in the environment where if the player focuses on them and clicks on them, then they're no longer trapped in this, seated body. They're able to sort of float around and sometimes take objects back from those environments. But the reason for that was there was during the play tests there was a lot of pushback against my concept of having a game where you were seated and you can't move. In video games, people play video games are very used to having control over navigation. The language of video games is very spatial, and main action games is movement, and I really wanted something that was seated, that was I wanted to give a replacement meaningful action to as an alternative to moving through space, and because meditation is often seated. So there were a lot of people who played the game and they said, well, the one thing I'd really like to do is move around. And I was like, man, how do I keep this sort of seated experience and allow that? Because one person said, well, I get that it's meditation, but my favorite form of meditation is walking meditation. I'm like, damn, okay. So maybe there is something to, maybe I do need to create the ability to allow people to move through space. So I created these sort of environments that the player could sort of wander through, but then the second they left, they would be back in their bodies. I also gave them the ability to select a plant in the environment and see themselves through the point of view of the plant, which there's sort of an overlay mask on top of it. It changes the visuals as well as an auditory change from the plant's perspective. And then there's these visions, these sort of two-dimensional animations that appear in the environment whenever the environment has a change in mood, to sort of signal that. One thing I also didn't mention is players, when they make eye contact, something forms between them. And if they do the right thing while they're making eye contact, they can create something new in the world that one of them can control and move through space. And if any of you are wondering where the title Desert Mothers came from, is it came from Desert Mothers were Christian religious ascetics who lived a hermetic life, generally out in the desert. This game does not come from a Christian perspective, but I thought, and also it's multiplayer, so they're not exactly living out in solitude, but there is this solitude that happens on an individual level when you go deeper and deeper into this meditation experience, and your environment changes in a way that sort of separates you from the other people who are in the environment. So that's sort of why I felt like Desert Mothers was a nice title for this. All right, thank you for watching. Thank you for playing if you're able to play. If you're still interested in playing, there's the link again, nerves.earth. During the conference, it's free to download. Afterwards, it goes back up to $3. So if you think you might play it later, if you might have access to a computer that runs it, you could go ahead and download it for free now and hold on to it forever. If you're interested in any of the other games that I've created, any of my other work, particularly the ones in this series where I explore altered states of consciousness with video game mechanics, you can go to aaronoldenburg.net. There are a few that are inspired by the salvia space, salvia divinorum, and that's a particular mind state. Also, you can get in touch with me. I think my email's listed on the website. If it's not, it's aaron.oldenburg@protonmail.com. Thanks again. Take care.
Hello, my name is Nama Costino and I'm the owner of One Hemisphere Counseling. I'm a clinical psychotherapist, an artisan, and a fifth-time presenter in this conference. I research the field of inspiration and its effects on our brain and well-being. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today's topic is Jolted by Light, nurturing the positive effects of inspiration on the brain. So what is inspiration? Inspiration is a core element engraved in the soul of the universe. It runs deep in the heart of humanity, as we are conditioned to view it as a high, favorable, and sought-after sensation. In ancient traditions, followers believed that inspiration derived from the gods. As the gods breathe or blow their light and wisdom onto us, we embody parts of their energy, and then we can experience sudden bursts of creativity or eureka moments. For centuries, the role of inspiration has been described as fundamental in fueling creative processes and connecting mankind with higher purpose. Albert Einstein claimed inspiration to be the only real valuable thing. Steve Jobs called it more powerful than intellect. And yet, in a goal-driven, oriented society, where tasks are usually pre-planned and measured, there seems to be less room for this, reconnecting with our own uniqueness and making room to be inspirationally guided towards our purpose. We tend to push away our dreams, our goals, and distance ourselves from stressful emotions. Over time, this coping strategy can become a blueprint to disconnection, affecting everything we do or feel. From the way we handle our finances and how abundantly we flow, to our ability to maintain healthy lifestyles and even healthy relationships. It seems the further we steer away from our element, the drier we feel, living life in a place of inertia as though we were almost sleepwalking through our best years. But is there a way to jolt up creativity intentionally? Modern-day writer Elizabeth Gilbert, in her book Big Magic, describes inspiration as a little outside genie, almost like an outsourced entity that basically collective stream of consciousness between people just looking for the grand host to take it and absorb it in. Once we're not ready to do that, the inspiration will race off and find another host. Meaning, in other words, have you ever felt, for example, feeling that you've got this wonderful idea and that you feel sparked by it and want to basically take it to the next level, but then for one reason or another you put it aside, you wait, you make excuses, you procrastinate, and then the next thing you know, you open the papers, you listen to the news, and there it is. Someone else used up your big idea for a startup, for a new theme, and stole it from you. Elizabeth Gilbert says that basically this is because inspiration doesn't belong to us. Just like the ancient theories about the gods, she speaks about the notion of an inspiration being a free flow element that only once we're open enough to be aware we can grasp it, bring it into our conditioning, bring it into our awareness, and work with it. She actually tells of a tale of herself wondering about this idea of a woman living in the Amazon and her whole story, the way it unfolds in there, and her having to leave this idea because of all sorts of conditions and circumstances happening in her life. The next thing she knew was that 2 years later, another author published almost the same exact story. So how could that possibly occur? Is inspiration really an external notion? Is it really outside of us? I tend to call this thing the faucet theory. My theory is that water, which is basically the generator of life, quenching our thirst, bringing us cleanness, cleansing our body, nourishing it, is a free thing. We all worship the water. A person walking 3 days in the desert, all thirsty, would basically drink out of a puddle if offered to after such a time. When we have faucets in our house, it's not the faucets that we worship. We make sure that they work right. It is the water that comes through that we depend on. Same as with consciousness. We are like walking faucets. When we're completely aware and open, inspiration can come in and flow through us. When we're closed, it's almost like we're disconnected from our core being and this unified field of consciousness full of nice, glowy ideas. In order to understand this better, we need to speak a little bit about the brain. Now, the brain is this grand mechanism that relies on memory to engrave habits. Habits originally are a wonderful thing. It's because they actually help us function daily without needing to relearn everything that we've already learned. Imagine a person after a stroke that's been hit and now needs to relearn all sorts of activities such as speech or movement and partial body. Imagine you had to tell yourself each time you wanted to walk, lift up your left foot and then lift up your right foot, or what it is to brush your teeth and relearn it all over again, or drive, or any automatic thing that you do every day. So habits and their basis engraved in memory are really good for us. They help the brain not to get overwhelmed and frees it up for new tasks. How is it related to inspiration? Well, the brain is really good with routine activities. Once we put in a measurable, tangible goal, the brain keeps us put in a structure and makes sure it remembers the right movements to make so we can follow up each and every day. Inspiration, on the other hand, loosens all this area in the brain that is called to catch us and firm us in our habits, and this is the way it can penetrate in. Good news is, when it does, it's not only that we feel motivated and inspired, our brain produces dopamine, which actually affects our positive way of looking upon ourselves. So, generally, inspiration is a wonderful thing. But the brain might give a little bit of a fight, and this is why we feel resistance to it sometimes. It's almost as though when we force ourselves to get inspired, when we try to force ourselves to write, to come up with ideas, we can't. The brain pulls this wall saying, hey, you're out of line here. You're supposed to finish your work, finish the task. You're not supposed to be finishing on this. Or the brain basically tries to solve it as any other task through its calculations and methodological sort of structure. That doesn't work with inspiration. So how is it possible to actually jolt and expand this area of the brain? Well, what's really interesting around this, as the brain creates some sort of an invisible glass ceiling around our habits. Like I said, it doesn't like change. So even if a habit isn't too good for us, the brain would be reluctant to change it. This is why we get hooked on addiction, on smoking. We find it hard to change habits and all of a sudden go to the gym or exercise, eat healthy food, whatever you want to do. Which is new, is going to take time. Research shows that we need to repeat a new habit for about an average of 66 days in order to plant in new neural pathways in the brain and engrave new memory of behaviors. So why is this so hard, and why is this glass ceiling in our way? I think the best example I can even come up with has to do with money. For example, if you're used to earning a specific amount of money or a very specific salary, even though there may be a part of you that wants to earn more, the brain would be comfortable knowing that there's something routine happening there every month. And each time you earn less, there's going to be a surge from the brain actually lowering all this area, expanding it so inspiration can actually come in to try to think of creative ideas where you can get more money. And then you'll get jolted up by all sorts of ways to start working on it, and hence bringing forth the money, the extra work that you need to do. The interesting thing is it works. For a few days, you're going to be jolted with motivation. But after a while, guess what? Once you get the money and you reach that glass ceiling of what you're usually used to earn, this is going to stop. Motivation is going to go down, and you're not going to understand, how come I've been so motivated, so inspired to work, to do this paper, to come up with this grand idea for a few days, and now it's stopped? It stopped because you've reached your glass ceiling, because you're up to your usual habit. Same with any kind of habit. If you're used to being in procrastination, if you're used to not coming up with new inspiration, the brain might jolt you up for a few days, but then it's just going to get you back to the regular mode that you're used to. So what do we do when we want extra inspiration? The best thing we can do is actually bypass the glass ceiling, which is very interesting. In order to explain more of that, I'm going to give an example of Adrian Hill. Adrian Hill was an artist that got infected by tuberculosis, and in 1942 was hospitalized in a sanatorium for healing. Adrian Hill wasn't doing too well, and his symptoms weren't looking like they were going to cure. Adrian Hill was sitting in his bed feeling depressed, and then one day he picked up a book and started reading. He found out that although he was weak, something about that activity, something about the fact that he could just sit down and read made him feel much, much better. He got motivated to ask his friends to bring him more books. The next thing you know, Adrian Hill was painting in the sanatorium. The clinicians around weren't paying too much attention to it and thought, as long as he's kept happy and at least he's not thinking miserable thoughts all day, what can hurt really? What they weren't expecting to see is positive healing effects on Adrian Hill's health, which was amazingly what happened. Adrian Hill started healing very fast from tuberculosis and actually left the sanatorium perfect and completely jolted with new inspiration. This is what caused him and pushed him to basically found the term as we know today as art therapy. So what can we learn from this experience? We actually learned that if we bypass the brain into inspiration, kind of doing it off the record, off the rails as a side activity, something there sparks in a very, very interesting way. When we try to feel better when we're feeling really down, it doesn't work, does it? If you tell yourself, oh, you got to feel better, you got to think positive, you're actually putting more stress on your brain, stress levels that actually make you get stuck in the same gray area that cannot come up with inspiration. I've been constantly asked and turned to these last months now, when we're all experiencing COVID, to be asked how to jolt inspiration during this time when people are in lockdown, they can't travel, and they're looking for creative ways to basically spend their time. The most interesting results and the most interesting scenarios that I've seen were with people that completely didn't plan out their inspiration. They were just doing things outside of their routine, and then something magical got sparked. The way we can explain it is that as long as the brain knows that it needs to keep a glass ceiling, it's going to give us a fight. So once we bypass it, what we do is realize where our glass ceiling is. It's very important to find out, and then just push it up a little notch. So in my research, both as an artist and creator and a clinical psychotherapist, I've been interviewing artists for the last 7 years and working alongside with patients with major depression, some with a dual tendency in their life to be artists and suffer from mood and affect disorders. From my interviews, I've actually noticed something very interesting. Interviewees were reporting mood as something that sometimes comes just like inspiration, like an outside entity. Both happiness and sadness can be induced by activities and by news and by external things that we have no control of. Could be happy news jolting us all up, or it could be something sad. When happy news comes into our frame and our state of mind, well, it's so light and it's so lovely that it usually tends to sort of escape us as fast as it came. Vice versa happens with sadness. When sadness pops in, it's usually feeling sticky and heavy, and it's there to stick around, not leaving us very fast. So those are emotions that we can't really depend on, external circumstances. What we can train ourselves to be is vital, and in that sense break the routine. One of my interviewees, who's also my client, who's been complaining of major depression, inability to get out of bed, was trying to push himself to paint and push himself, and you can guess what happened. It just didn't work. What we started doing together was actually working through this glass ceiling in a completely different way, and instead of addressing the problem, the elephant in the room, the cause on the table, I told him, let's do something completely different and just find another activity to focus on. Let's find an activity that you enjoy doing. Well, just like Adrian Hill, my client told me he loves reading and brought in an interesting book to the clinic. He said he couldn't bring himself to read in the last couple of months when he was depressed, so we took it as a task to each time that he comes into the clinic to just read a few pages and discuss them and understand why he likes the author so much and the book. What happened after just a few weeks' time was incredible. My client that could barely make it out of bed, could barely make it into session, started reading at home as well, continuing just a few pages from where we left off. The next thing he was doing is actually reading more books, and then the next thing was sketching in bed, and then the next step was going back to the studio. The point of all this being is that sometimes we need to jolt our creative system, opening our faucets from the back door where our glass ceiling doesn't pay attention to it. So through these times of COVID, and just generally, if you're working in an office job or just trying to keep your life more creative and see how it can, affect your life, the best thing to do is just to change routine. Do the most obscene thing and the most unpredictable time. For example, you're sitting and you're in a deadline and you're all stressed and you've got this project to finish. Sometimes if you push it, you're not going to get anywhere. But if you just stop, go out for a walk, have a drink, what you're going to be experiencing is something that I call a mind dump. Firstly, your mind is going to be busy with all the thoughts and stresses that you were stuck with at work, telling you everything that's not working, trying to plan out the future and all the possible catastrophes that can happen. But after a while, the walk is going to calm you down, and some ideas are actually going to be making their way through because you're finally silenced. Have you ever noticed what happened to any one of us when we just take a walk? How we tend to have this constant rumble in our brain, and how after a while of walking we feel so alive, relieved, at one with nature, and thinking all of these great thoughts that we have to come home and write down? How about when we exercise or listen to music? Has this ever happened to you? And this is why it's a very tricky and sort of tacky way to deal with a glass ceiling. Basically, do something else that you like. Go out, have a nice drink, have some ice cream in the summery heat, and go back. Just focus your attention on something else. So, this has been working so well for me with clients that I just wanted for this finale of this lovely little talk to share with you what I've been doing with some of my interviewees, some of the artists that have been coming forth and telling me about their creative processes. Sometimes in an interview, we will sit down and start discussing the interview and basically reach some sort of dead end. Instead of going into these normal themes of interview, I would ask the participants, the interviewees, to do something else with me and just have a little creative time. If there were musicians, I would just ask to go in the studio, shoot some photos as I like to do, and just let them jam around a bit and tell me about their music, which is sometimes off the record in an interview, because we would talk about other songs they like, artists, funny memories that they may have. I would actually take a little sheet of paper and start drawing something, so it will become some sort of like a joint inspirational brainstorm. From there, sometimes there would be a very interesting flow kind of naturally taking us into an interview without just being sort of stuck and all boxed in the usual questionnaire. I would at a point take out my camera and just start shooting them in any natural, unplanned way that can come up, where would be incredible sessions where we would be doing dress up or impressionating, all sorts of things that have nothing to do with the interview in the beginning, but ended up being some sort of closure and inspiring finale. The best way to jolt inspiration into our life is just to be open to it, just to be open, to open the faucet, and knowing that once we're open, it's just going to come. We can't force it, we cannot create it, but we can learn to help our brain quiet down and be open to it. I hope you've enjoyed this talk and enjoy the rest of our panel in this conference. Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, my name is Danny Caputi and I am a founding member of Peace Inc. What you're looking at behind me is something that will integrate every aspect of consciousness research you can imagine. I would imagine most people are at this conference because you value the multidisciplinary aspect of consciousness research. And what a lot of people miss sometimes is the art of it. And how art is integrated with science so intricately. And what you see behind me is a perfect example of that. There is a study from Michigan State University that shows Nobel Prize winning scientists are 2.5 times as likely as non-Nobel Prize winning scientists to also be artists or musicians. And Ken Wilber, in his in a recent book, talks about the integration of the good, the beautiful, and the true, and how in the past the good was shown as the good was left to religion, the beautiful was left to art, and the true was left to science, and how integrating those three are really critical for moving forward with solving the problems we have in the world today. So keep that in mind as you check out this demo. Hope you enjoy.
First. So hi, my name is Leo Madrid. I am a consciousness researcher based in Alameda, California, and I have, for the most part, dedicated my entire existence for being to the consciousness research industry full-time since 2012. My background includes serving 10 years in the U.S. Navy as a warfare specialist and engineer. Went through many schools that the Navy sent me through for engineering, as well as leadership training and advanced management. I hold certificates in statistical process control, and I have a bachelor's degree in business from St. Mary's College of California. Since becoming a consciousness researcher, I've logged over 400 individual experiments, many of them large-scale installations at Burning Man's Pre-Compression, World's Fair Nano, Maker Faire. We've won 3 Editor's Choice Awards at Maker Faire and have invitations to events all over the world. What we have here is HALO. HALO is an acronym. It stands for Hypercube Algorithmic Language Oracle. We'll go into the details on that later, but what this is what we believe the world's first, or at least next, true hybrid quantum computer. The reason why it's quantum is it incorporates on board here 9 random number generators, which all have a quantum noise source. And it is also calculating hybrid qubits in what we call actually qubit bytes, and they're 8-digit bits. And this is not something you would have seen before because we created it, we invented it. And so there really isn't a standard by which you can measure this by. So it's very important to approach this with a wide open mind. And because a lot of people will think that advances in quantum computing can only come from universities that have huge research budgets. And we have proof here that that is not the case. And if you think about the Wright brothers and the discovery of flight, the entire world was working on solving the flight problem. Every university had an engineering department that was working on it. Every motor company in some way was looking at, ship companies were looking at how do we fly, how do we cross the ocean by air. And who solved it? 2 field researchers. And they had an insight on the day-to-day subtleties, and they could make improvements and changes immediately there in the field that would normally take weeks or months or never in controlled environments. And so we've figured out a way to almost create that qubit processor in atmospheric conditions, in just regular temperature and pressure. And so we believe this is literally a quantum leap forward in the world of hybrid computing. We are currently registered on the D-Wave Quantum Computing Research Platform in the COVID-19 research section. So one of our applications is a geolocation-based COVID-19 contact tracing application, which is integrated with the D-Wave. We need the D-Wave because it is a superconductor computer that can do the training fast enough to make it real time. So let's demonstrate how this is integrated with the D-Wave.
Okay, so what you're looking at here is one of the applications we've designed that involves non-deterministic programming with the non-random event detectors. This particular application is looking at the number of new COVID cases per day in the San Jose area of California, and comparing that against the Global Consciousness Project's data stream, as well as our data stream from our non-random event detectors. And what it's going to do is it's going to send that data to the D-Wave superconducting quantum computing platform and run a binary classification machine learning problem to see if it can separate days that will have more cases from days that will have less cases. Okay, and now that we have all of the data collected, we're going to go ahead and send this to the machine learning algorithm on the D-Wave. And so right now it is sending our data to the D-Wave. So for this first model, it looks like we're going to have to go back and look at what we can do to not have this overfit. And there are the results of the decision tree algorithm. Looks like yet again this is consistent with our prior findings with this. That model tends to overfit, but these next two models, the QBoost and the QBoost Plus, which integrates the former three, tend to do a little bit better. So we'll see how it does today. Okay, and then here's the QBoost Plus. Now, interesting thing about the QBoost Plus is that we have, this is really interesting, I haven't seen this before, 5% accuracy.
Wow.
But yet we have a very good sample size, so that is pretty remarkable statistically. And so in theory we can just flip that around and get a 95% accuracy. And so that's pretty exciting. I didn't expect to see that.
Welcome to the Halo website. This is the homepage, which will be our interface with both our Halo computer and currently the D-Wave, but other types of quantum computers as well. This site is active. If you subscribe, there are two plans. One is free, one is $1 per month, and they both give you the same access. So becoming a member, it just allows you to access various parts of the site, and that $1 goes to our research. And if you look up in the research area, we're just going to cover for now the qubit section. And if you go in there, this is where Halo gets the name, Hypercube Algorithmic Language Oracle. We have an algorithm that utilizes the non-random event detectors that are on Halo to pull up from a database. And here you have these 8 represent the 8 different non-random event detectors we have on Halo. So this is not pulling from one stream, but rather 8 separate streams. So when a person hits select, you saw this pulls from the database various words. This will be refined over time, but this is where the qubit comes in. 8 bits bytes. So this is streaming at roughly 50,000 samples per second on each one of these. And so when we hit select now, we're creating a selection from that, and then this binary code goes to our database. And in the future, we will have this compared to what's happening locally, what's happening with any groups, and the greater universe of data, such as we can utilize, such as the Global Consciousness Project or the HeartMath Coherence Project. This line up here at the front, or this top, is also a word, or a word that comes out of the same database and is just updated on a continuous basis. So all of this information is subtly influenced by an extension of the user's consciousness, and that's what we'll be getting into when we describe the model behind this and why this works locally and non-locally. Welcome to Halo's home, and this room is designed to actually increase the effect size that we've been talking about. And these lights here at the strip bottom are LIFX lights, which are integrated with Halo, the non-random event detectors. So this is an example of a propagating wave force, self-propagating feedback loop expressed as art. So from here, we can go take a closer look at Halo. And these are 10 of the random event generators working in unison, although not directly connected. And so you will be able to see moments of coherence when they all sort of sync up, and I'll come back to it if it happens. So on board Halo here, this is, I believe, one of the most powerful desktop computers you will find anywhere. It's got a full stack of RAM, two GeoForce GTX and one Red Devil GPUs. So it's a triple GPU board. And over here, we are making room for a stack of Raspberry Pis. This is a Raspberry Pi hooked up to the XYO bridge network. And in conjunction with Sentinels, which you can actually buy from our website, they are the central part of the COVID-19 contact tracing app. And so it's integrated with the Halo here. And then over here, you'll see four of the NEDs. And then under the hood, we have four more, and then everything else. This is also equipped with Wireshark. So this is a computer, but it is also kind of like a stationary satellite. And over here, it's liquid cooled. There's our liquid cooling. And as an innovative experiment, we have actually combined my DNA and combined that with the cooling here. That light and this over here is also a non-random event detector. So when you look back, you can see and detect coherence sometimes among them all. Right here in the center, we have these two lights. They're not hooked up right now, but they will be eventually hooked up to the non-random event detectors and integrated or influenced directly with whoever's looking at them. One of the things I noticed with a lot of the research that was going on with these random event generators is it was generally just one or two hooked up, and they were trying to make the effect sizes increase through that. And I kind of took it and re-engineered it from a military perspective rather than trying to prove a point. I wanted to see, hey, what can these things do? What are they capable of? And what I have found is one of the most powerful uses of these is the proximity. And so when you're close to it, it has an effect to it. And that's one of the main principles of the feedback loop that we're creating. Here is a surge synthesizer, which we will be integrating with. This is an 8-channel EEG brainwave sensor, which we will be able to program Halo with our consciousness, or at least utilize our consciousness for various forms of experiences, including heightened states of consciousness. So if you can imagine yourself, close your eyes, sitting on a seat, going into a state of consciousness where the entire environment, including the space that you're sitting on, will change and modulate according to your thought waves. And with this device, we can actually program all of that together. Okay, there are two major elements of the model that we've created that explains why this behaves the way it does. The AIM unit and Halo as well, as far as the mind-matter interaction. And I came to this conclusion again through hundreds of experiments. And the first half of it was conceptual, kind of still is because we haven't measured it, but it was how consciousness affects time. And if you look at Einstein's relativity, there's general and special, and they kind of explain how things happen in the outer space. They explain how when we observe somebody and when a body's in motion, they experience time differently. So time slows down for a body in motion, and that is measurable in time dilation. And so I feel that humans have the same thing, that since we have mass and our electromagnetic sphere fluctuates, that time bends around us just like any other object it would in space. And this is how, when you really examine into the complexities of this, explains how we affect it from the spatial distortion perspective. The second part of the model is I call anthro-murmuration. And murmuration, we've all seen birds swarm and fish swarm together and move seemingly in unison in a somewhat unexplainable manner. We know that there are sonar and radar components to that. And we also know that human beings can create or develop very advanced hearing after they lose their sight. So we know that humans can echolocate and have those abilities. So based on those assumptions, I came to the hypothesis that humans have the same ability, and we swarm together. You can see it on freeways, dance floors, concerts, things where there's large amounts of people coming together, moving in unison without any coordinated effort. And I call this anthromurmuration. And this explains at a basic level that our electromagnetic force, obviously connected with our heart, every time our heart beats, it distorts the space-time around us and propagates that wave outward. And according to the research at HeartMath, they have the ability to show that they can measure that up to 12 feet away. So we know just from their research that our life force is having an effect. And a common question I get is, what led you to become a consciousness researcher? And it's a complex answer. I was always kind of interested through the arts, but in 2007, I had a traumatic brain injury while in the care of the VA hospital, and which resulted in 100% retrograde amnesia. So I lost my memory, and it was completely gone for weeks. It started coming back, but it was months before I was really functional, and probably a few years before I can just re-enter society and work and do things. But it was in that in-between period where I really started wondering, where did my memories go? What is consciousness? What is the root of it? And are they coming back? You know, how do I get them back? And that's when I started doing things like meditating and looking into consciousness. And it was on that search when I discovered the Global Consciousness Project and some of the technologies we're looking at here with random events. So one of the, I guess, compelling personal experiences that really validates the research that I'm doing is a near-death experience as a child. And my brother and I were playing hide and seek in the neighborhood with some, family and friends. We lived in a small town in a neighborhood that had lots of aunts and uncles, grandparents were there, and so it was not unusual for us to be gone all day. And we were playing hide and seek. My brother and I were hiding in a house that was empty, and we hid in an old refrigerator. One of the kids came in and found us, opened the door and found us, slammed the door, ran away, and locked us in. Now, if you know about these old refrigerators, they are pretty soundproof, and they're locked from the outside, you can't get out. And so we were kicking and screaming until we ran out of air. And my mother was about a block away, and for absolutely no explainable reason, has a complete panic attack. She's in the house, and she knows there's something wrong with her babies. And she runs outside screaming our names. Where are you? Where are you? And there wasn't anybody there. Nobody knew what was going on, and nobody told her where we were. But for some reason, she knew we were in that house. And she made a beeline for that house, ran right to the refrigerator, opened the door to our lifeless bodies. And if she was just a few minutes later, we wouldn't have made it. And I'm not the only one that's experienced this. History is replete with extreme examples of this very thing happening, including Hans Berger, the creator of the EEG and discoverer of the alpha and beta wave. I would say that my work is a continuation in many regards of his work, and I think that we've actually discovered what he was looking for.